Welcome everyone to another episode of Exploring Concept Art with me, your host, Jason Etienne. So I'm doing this tutorial live this time. Usually I'll do a sketch and I'll do some concept art and I'll speed it up so I can talk over the process. I've decided to kind of go live with this. Well, not live, but do it in real time. And see how we go. So if all being well, if this kind of works out okay, I'll be doing some more in the future. So I've decided to concentrate this episode on quite a difficult one, hands. Most people really struggle, probably more accurately, when drawing hands. I think it's because there are so many ways that you can draw them, so many different hand gestures that you get. It's easy to kind of get lost and lose all sense of proportion. And so what I'm hoping with this session is that you'll have a chance to take a real kind of a sort of building blocks approach to it, a more kind of practical, solid approach to it. As I've mentioned in previous tutorials, a lot of this stuff is about breaking things down to geometric shapes. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm just going to sort of leap into it, get drawing, and away we go. So as you'll see here, I've got some examples of hands. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit if I can, if it'll let me. There we go. So just looking at these different hands. Now it's a good practice just to sort of work from reference. Don't try and make it up yourself, particularly if you're kind of new to drawing. Try and use reference. I mean, I would also advise you to draw your own hands, or draw other people's hands, but draw from real life. Just for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be drawing from photographs. So I've got a few examples here. I'm just going to sort of leap straight into it. I'm going to start off by really picking perhaps the most basic. So something like, say, this. There's nothing too complex with that. So away we go. Make sure that you got a good brush, by the way. I usually use brush 14. I'll show you here. Just bring on the little pot here, go to the brush presets. Brush 14, there we go. You'll see down there, I think it's in assorted or basic brushes, or it might be natural brushes. Either natural brushes or natural brushes 2, but you'll find brush 14, and it's kind of like this kind of how to describe it. It's kind of dots, a cluster of dots, and there are various ones. There's 21, 24. 14 is the one that I use, and usually put on shape dynamics and scatter. I don't know why it's showing the exclamation mark there, because it is working. Make sure you got pen pressure on there. With scatter though, you want to make sure, if you see there, if I just click on that, you'll see the bottom there, you can see it changing. You want something that's kind of going to look a little bit kind of like, although it's a brush, to me it's kind of like a pencil. Yeah, just get that really nice, it's almost like a really nice, what would you say, kind of like HB, possibly going through to 2B pencil. So I always like to kind of, generally I don't tend to use a lot of brushes. I tend to kind of stick with these. So that's the kind of thing that you want. And also, before you really leap into it, make sure that you got the opacity set at certainly not at 100%. You want that about 33%, something like that, when you're doing some sketching. When you start to then get into details, then you can kind of bump it up. Then you can kind of start to darken it. I might just take that pixel, take it down to about, there we go. So you can see there, you can kind of go in darker. Also, I use the same brush with smudge. If you don't know how to access smudge, just right click with your pen or mouse, and it's down at the bottom there. And I love smudge. You can do a lot with it. It's a bit like smudging with your finger, you know, when you're using pencils. I just tend to, and I tend to kind of stick with the same thing. Yeah, I don't tend to kind of be too varied. Have a bit of a play though. So once you get those two things set up, have a go at drawing some circles. Just try and practice drawing with the side of your hand on your tablet and moving it around in a circular motion. So depending if you're left-handed or right-handed, I tend to kind of go anti-clockwise. I don't tend to kind of draw circles that way. I've just sort of grown up drawing them this way for some reason. And you want to draw some squares as well. This is just really warming your hand up. Yeah. If you've been sort of drawing and you've come across this video, then you could perhaps just, you know, ignore this part of the video. But I always like to kind of like start off by just having a bit of a practice. Yeah, just a doodle. It doesn't even have to be squares or circles or indeed triangles. It could just be a variety of shapes. But given that most objects can be broken down into geometric shapes, it's just a good practice to get into. Yeah. So just having a bit of a doodle. And again, you know, if you want to just kind of have a bit of draw some squiggles, some zigzags, whatever it is, wavy lines, just have a little play, warm your hand up. Yeah. Don't just leap straight into doing it. It's like anything. I used to live with many moons ago. I used to, when I was a student, I used to live with music students, and you'd always hear them practicing, going through the scales. Yeah. And this is essentially what you're doing when you're drawing, when you're warming up. Excuse me, got a bit of a frog in my throat. Just take a drink. Yeah, you're going through the scales essentially. This is what you're doing. You're warming up. Okay, I think that's good. That's enough. I'm going to just take these out now. Just use the Marquee tool, and so what I'll do, I'll just cut it out. I'll just create another layer, put it on top. Right, let's get going. So I'm going to take the opacity back down. So I'm going to start off drawing this hand. Now, first of all, you've got to break it down into components. So for example, the hand, you know, what kind of shape is the hand? Yeah. So I'm going to say, well, the hand is pretty much, the main part of the hand is kind of square, although it's not strictly square, right? But just starting off with that kind of geometric shape. It's actually tapered. So it's like a sort of square that kind of tapers down like so. Also, just be mindful when you're drawing to be using your 50% observation, 50% drawing. Yeah, you don't want to just get lost into doing the drawing. You want to be going back and forth. Yeah, back and forth between these two, between your drawing and between what you're observing. Yeah, back and forth. It can be quite tiring, but you do need to kind of get into that Hobbit, Lord of the Rings on the mind, habit. Yeah, of putting putting your attention, kind of splitting your attention, should I say, 50-50. So we've got the kind of square, the tapered square. Then I'm looking at this. Now this is more triangular, yeah. So I'm going to put a little kind of triangle in there, something like that. Again, I'm going to work over the top of this, so none of it is going to be sort of staying as it is. This is really about creating the kind of scaffold or the structure. Next, we're moving on to the fingers. So the fingers, generally, they're kind of rectangular, right? So it's a combination of rectangles and circles. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of putting the structure in. So you can see what I'm doing there. Squares, triangles, rectangles, circles, more rectangles, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then you want to be building it up that way. So going on to the next part, and you know, I'm not too concerned at this point with making a how can I put it, an exact replica of this. This is really about the principles. I'm not like aiming for, you know, a complete facsimile of the photograph. It's really just to teach you the principles. Now, generally speaking as well, when you're learning to draw, it's good to tackle difficult subjects. The reason for that is that if you can get through that, if you can actually tackle the difficult stuff first, then it makes things a lot easier. Okay, instead of just kind of drawing what you just want to draw. I mean, of course, you know, do that by all means, have some fun. But if you really want to hone your skills and become really accomplished as an artist, lean into the difficult stuff. Yeah, the stuff that you'd ordinarily kind of go, oh, I don't want to face that. Lean into it, and I promise you the rewards will be great. Yeah, because then when it comes around to doing easier stuff, it really will be. I was going to say a doddle, but you know, some people in the world may not know what a doddle is. In the UK, a doddle is referring to something that's easy. Yeah, it'll be a doddle. Yeah, so just saying it'll make things easy. Okay, so we've got the fingers now. Obviously, just remembering that, you know, generally speaking, the kind of middle finger there is going to be larger than the other two, so it kind of goes around in an arc. It's just something, again, just to be aware of. Think arc, yeah, and then the little finger kind of drops away a bit more dramatically. So these three are kind of almost neck and neck, yeah, with the middle finger being the highest. And these vary. I mean, I think the generally speaking, the sort of forefinger here is a little bit longer than the other finger here. Yeah, and then you get the little finger there. Okay, and then there's the thumb to put in. So again, I'm going, all right, so we've got this kind of going on here. I'm not going to bother too much at the moment about trying to make it look organic. I'm just getting the structure in. So again, this is a kind of a triangular, squarish type of shape, followed by another kind of square, and then followed really by an oval, actually, something a bit more like an oval. Okay, so it looks a bit like a robot's hand, right? But it's but you've got your structure there. Okay, so resist the temptation to go into a lot of detail, and this will all change, of course. I can already kind of see some issues going on here, but don't worry too much about it, right? We've got that there, and it's only then, once you've kind of got that in there, then you can start thinking, right, now I want to start putting some detail in, you know, making it, firming it up. Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it. Firm up the drawing. So I've increased the opacity, you can see there, maybe even a little bit more. And now what I'm doing is I'm really going to start taking a more organic approach with the fingers, and going by this hand, you know, the fingers are a little bit thicker, so I'm just sort of taking it around excuse me, frog in the throat again. And do the same thing again with this, with the middle finger. Again, just looking at the nails. Don't get too hung up on the details. You just give an intimation, yeah, an intimation of it. At this stage, you know, it's you know, particularly if you're new to drawing or you're wanting to improve your skills, don't get too hung up on the details. Yeah, that will come. Yeah. It's much more important that you get your structure sorted. Yeah. The wrong thing to concentrate on is putting all kind of glossy renderings and details. That's the wrong approach. Better that it kind of looks rough and structured than kind of glossy and rendered and the proportions are all out of whack. Yeah, you don't really want to be working that way. There are people who work that way, but you don't want to be one of those people. You want to be someone who's excuse me, accomplished, and you know what you're doing, right? So you can see there. Okay, so again, I'm just going to bring that around a little bit. We've got the wrist there, and then it kind of goes down. Now, this is always usually a bit one of the trickier parts, the thumb. You've got this kind of opposable thumb, and again, so obviously you can't see this, but I'm looking back and forth, yeah, because I've already kind of got my structure. Okay, so now I can concentrate a bit more on detail. So everything's in gradations. I'm just looking at the nail now. The reason I'm putting the nail in here is I just need to kind of get my bearings, really. It's a bit of an awkward angle. It's not the easiest thing, so don't give yourself a hard time if you find this a bit of a struggle, because it's not the easiest of things to do. You know, and as the old saying goes, practice makes perfect. That's exactly correct. Yeah, you just got to keep practicing. And if you can do that and keep doing it diligently, I promise you, your drawing will get better. But that's pretty much it. You know, I could put some, some shading in there. Maybe we'll do that. I might do this at the end of the video, or if we've got some time, or save for another time. But really, don't concentrate too much on the rendering. Yeah. Let's try something else. Let's try drawing. We could have a go at that. Could have a go at drawing that. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll cut that out. Let's have a go at cutting that out, or copying it, should I say. We'll copy that and then paste that down. Put that around about there. Just enlarge that a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to multiply that just so it kind of, you can see a bit of the background coming through. So let's have a go at this. This one's quite tricky, yeah, because you've got this whole thing going on with the fingers. The process of doing this is going to be similar to that, but it's a little bit trickier. But let's have a go. So again, we've got a square. Oh, let's let me take the opacity down a little bit. So we've got a square this time. It's a bit of an angle, but of course it will kind of taper. Yeah. So it's just kind of tapering slightly. And again, that kind of follows on. I mean, that will go on from the, excuse me, it'll form part of the thumb there. But initially, we're just going to leave that as that. Now the fingers, again, rectangles. But this is where it gets tricky, because what you've got going on here is the fingers kind of bending. It's kind of bending around that away, kind of slightly. Yeah. So what you're doing is, this is a bit of perspective coming in here, because essentially you've got this coming along and then you've got the finger. So don't necessarily think about, you've got to get this right 100%. You have lots of lines in there. If you look online and you look at artists' drawings, famous artist drawings, it's just a multitude of lines. It's not one line, and it's a bit like, how can I put it? It's like all the lines, all the sketches, all of this kind of stuff. Like, say you're drawing you're trying to draw a sphere. Yeah. In a sense, what's going on is it's you're aiming for a target. Yeah. Each line is an attempt, from your brain through to your hand, as it were, is an attempt to try and give an approximation of the object. Yeah. So each line, you're trying to hit the target. You're trying to hit the target. Everything's about trying to kind of hit the target. Now, the fact that you end up with something that kind of looks lovely and oh, that's so nice, not like nice kind of sketches and nice drawings, is a byproduct of that. This is your brain kind of going, trying to hit the target, and this is what's going on. You're not thinking this, of course, when you're doing it, but this is what's going on. It's several attempts to try and get to an approximation of the object that you're drawing. Yeah. Same thing with when you're doing hands. Yeah. So the lines are really, because you can't just, unless you're a computer, you cannot just kind of draw a finger like that, but perfectly and in proportion. I mean, some people do. Some artists do draw that way. I mean, that's fine. That's fine, right? But generally speaking, if you're going for the more kind of realist point of view, you'd need to be. This is the kind of stuff you need to be doing. Second finger. So again, this kind of you're dealing with rectangles. This is a bit trickier because what's going on here is, if you look here, that part there, first of all you got the rectangle there, but then it dips so that the finger is bending, and then you've got the top of essentially the last bit of the joint on the finger. Yeah, so it kind of curves around, and then you got another curve. It's a little bit obscure because it's the contrast is turned up on this, so it's a little bit obscure, but essentially that similar thing with the other one, because you can see it also. Something to bear in mind as well is the curvature. So again, be aware of that. I'm just looking at that next part of it. Comes down close there, and again you've got the other finger coming down, something like that. Yeah. So rectangles and curves, and then the little finger, again you got part of the kind of like the square there, but you can just kind of start to see where it bends, and then you've got that curve, and then it curves around. So again, it looks a little bit of a mess, but don't worry, we're just kind of getting the details in. So again, with this, keep looking at where you're at. Don't just concentrate on your drawing. Think, okay, so thumb's probably starting probably around about there, and it's kind of like, well, this is kind of slightly different because you're getting a sort of triangular shape kind of going on there. Okay, almost like a square that's kind of tapered, and then you've got a sort of tapered kind of, well, more of a sort of triangle there really. And then you've got a rectangle, which is there, and then another kind of rectangle, and then there's a kind of well, it's not a full ellipse, it's kind of part of an ellipse. So again, some of it is going to look a bit off. Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it. Drawing isn't about perfection. Yeah, so that's what I always say to my students. It isn't about perfection. And it's about the journey. Without sounding kind of too new age. But it is very much about the process. Yeah, and you've got to really enjoy the process. It's not about I've got to create a perfect piece of art. Anyway, I'm going to bump the opacity up on there. Now, once I've kind of got the structure, then I'm thinking, okay, so now I can start trying to correct some of this. And might just zoom in a little bit now. There we go. And start bringing in that finger. And little curves, so the creases in the finger. Ditto with this one as well. I'm just curious to see how that fingernail's working out. again, quite tricky. So if you do, you know, I mean, hey, I've been drawing all my life, and sometimes this stuff gets tricky, yeah. So if you find it difficult, that's because it is, but don't stress. Okay, same thing again with this finger. And then we've got just going to try and take this down just a little bit. Might just increase the opacity as well a little bit. Okay, and again, and then you've got the gaps in there. So I'll might just increase that a little bit. And again, just really firming this up. You know, putting some of the knuckles in, bringing that around. Don't worry about any of this stuff, all the lines. I mean, you know, when it comes to it, if you're like just mapping out a drawing, you can deal with all that at a, you know, later date. If you find it a bit confusing, you can always excuse me, you can always rub part of it out. I might just put a bit of a crease in there just to give an intimation of, you know, you got the creases running through. Yeah. So it's not too bad. Again, you know, this is just really getting you off the starting block, yeah? Just getting you going. Of course, you know, if you want to do, you know, you could work into this even more. You know, and start putting a lot more detail, you know, tidying it up, putting some details in there. But that's, you know, perhaps for another day. Alright, let's have one last try. Let's have a go at doing a fist, yeah? So I know there's probably some of you out there who like kind of doing more kind of superhero stuff. Keep doing that. You know, very often the superheroes are kind of clenched fist, aren't they? You know, Batman or Spider-Man, Superman, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to bring that around there to, well, put it around about there. And again, I'm just going to multiply that just to take the detail out. So again, I'm just going to go back to my layer. So again, you know, just looking at the fist, yeah, if I just zoom in, so spend a bit of time whenever you're doing any of this stuff, just spend a bit of time looking at the subject, yeah? That doesn't even necessarily mean doing anything, just look at it, observe it, yeah? Just go into a kind of Zen-like mode, yeah? And just sit, have a coffee or a cup of tea, and just absorb, just look at the details, yeah? I promise you, the more you look at this stuff, the more details you'll see, yeah, when you look deeper. I used to be a big, well, still a fan of, was it Vietnamese Zen Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh, and in one of his talks or one of his books he talked about, you know, looking at things, and the more you look at things, the more detail you see, and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper into it, yeah? Just try it out, don't take my word for it, don't take his word for it, just have a look yourself. You will start to see more detail, yeah? Obviously for the purposes of the video, we can't spend the next, say, 10 minutes you know, just going into a Zen-like state with this, you know, but we could just take a few moments just to look at it, yeah? Okay. And again, it's just breaking it down, so I might just, not that. Is that one? There we go. I might just enlarge it a little bit because it's a little bit small. Let's bring that up a bit. Okay. So again, breaking it down. Yeah. So we've got essentially a square shape going on here, right? Start off by just drawing a square. If you want to get your bearings, just draw a square. Yeah, this acts as a kind of frame, a reference point, because very often when you're drawing organic forms, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to kind of get a bearing. This is why often you know, and I've done this before. You get artists who do gridding. You know, perhaps I'll do a video on that about how to kind of grid photographs, because sometimes, you know, you need this kind of scaffold around the object to make, you know, to try and make some sense of it and get it in order. It's very, very difficult because it's a bit like there's no way of measuring, and the only way of measuring is by breaking things down into, I guess, you know, into geometric shapes, right? And then you can work into it. So we've got a basic square going on here, but as you can see there, I might just draw on that a little bit, just so it's not so defined there. You can see. Okay, so you can see there there's some other stuff going on, yeah, aside from the square, which is actually more skewed. The square actually looks skewed, so as if you've kind of shifted it to one side. And then we've got this kind of triangular bit, you can see there. So again, no details as yet, it's just the geometric shape. And you can see there, if it helps, you can do things like, okay, well, where the palm is, where the thumb's going to be, is kind of almost like a ball. If it kind of helps you get some kind of, you know, get a bearing on it, then absolutely, that's absolutely fine. So going on from there, you've kind of got kind of, again, a sort of tapered square shape, something like that. Yeah. And then again, it's kind of like a triangle, and then this part again is like a sort of square, tapered sort of square, and then it's kind of like an oval. Something like that. It's quite tricky. I mean, it is. It's not easy to do. So now I'm just going to sort of sketch in again. So put in like a sort of square and a circle as well, you know, to kind of create the oval. Same thing again with this. And again, keep looking, don't get lost in the drawing, keep going back and forth, 50% observation, 50% drawing, yeah. And again, so you can see that there's a kind of, it arcs. So it arcs down, yeah. So again, so a bit of a circle, and this time you can see part of, so again we've got like a square there, a rectangle should I say, there, followed by another one there. We've got the knuckle, again just going to indicate that as like that. Then I can see that, so I can already see a bit of a problem. But again, you know, this is, you know, I can draw, right, and I've been drawing for many, many years, but you know, invariably you find that, you know, you get out, like, I can already see, you know, there's a problem. Yeah, there's a problem there, and the problem being that, if I just firm that up a little bit, where I started out, you know, so I did all that, went to this side, here. Yeah, then sort of worked across, and then you can see, oops, it's not quite there. Well, you know, but then what you don't want to do is start kind of widening the fingers and making it so it stretches all the way. Yeah, that's like the, you know, the tail wagging the dog. No, no, no. This is a safer bet than that. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with that and just really bring it in a little bit sooner. Yeah, sooner than I planned. And you can just echo it, you know, or not echo it. You can run it parallel with the lines that you've drawn. If it's confusing, you can just rub these parts out. Yeah, like so. And again, you got the creases with the on the palm. That's going to sort of taper in a little bit. This comes round. And then you got the wrist. Okay. Which is like, that's kind of looking all, I mean, it is a difficult shape, and you might find yourself questioning, you know, questioning your own self. Like, is this looking right? Well, just keep measuring it. Once you've kind of got like a basic structure in, okay, then you can think, okay, so now what I'm going to do, excuse me, is then going to go back again to the beginning. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit there. In fact, tell you what, let me see if I can, there we go. Just going to see if I can just bring that in a little bit closer. Yeah, just so I've got it in view. Excuse me. And then I can think, okay, so now I've got that basic structure in, which is not perfect, right? But it gives me something to go on. And then what I can start doing is going, okay, well, I'm going to just have a look at the thumb now. And put in some of these creases in there. And then just firming it up all the way around here. So just putting some of the creases in there, and again, not getting too lost in the detail. It's just to really start firming up. Of course, you know, you've got over here, you've got the contrast is up, so you're not seeing a lot of the detail. Yeah, so perhaps we don't need to worry too much about that. But again, just kind of trying to firm things up just a bit more. Keep looking. Don't just concentrate on the drawing, you've got to be looking back and forth, yeah. Don't be seduced by putting in detail. So really just kind of making it more defined. That's all we're doing here, just making it more defined, not bothering too much now with drawing geometric shapes. It's more drawing around those geometric shapes that you've created. again, we've got this area, you can see that area there. I mean, that's pretty much in darkness. We can't really see that, so I'm just going to put that there for the time being. And then we've got the other finger, and again we've got creases going in. We can see that little finger there. There's actually a bit more to it there, but again, that's in darkness. It's because of the contrast, so we can't really sort of see that, so you can kind of intimate it. And again, I might just change the brush on that. Yeah, that's all looking alright. So, because I can see, if you can see there, there's a bit of a bulge. You've got that line going on there, so it kind of comes out, then dips back in again, and then comes out, and then kind of down, like so. And I'm just putting a few little bits and bobs in there. Now, you know, I'm still not kind of 100% on this, you know, in terms of being happy, but you've got the beginnings of something. I mean, this is really, ultimately, this is the kind of point of this tutorial is to let you into, you know, what my process is. And I think a lot of artists share this as well, where it's more about figuring it out. All drawing, in a sense, is like, it's like problem solving. It's a bit like when you go into doing like 3D modeling, like in Maya, or you know, using Unreal Engine. It's problem solving, and in a way, you're trying to reach an objective, and then you're trying to solve problems along the way. So it becomes a kind of problem solving exercise. It's one way of looking at it. And with drawing, it's a similar thing. You've got something in mind, or something you're drawing from, and then the rest of it is like, how do I solve the problem of perspective or proportion or whatever it's going to be? How do I solve that problem to kind of get the results that I want? Now, I'm not saying that you're necessarily thinking about this when you're drawing. It's just that this is the process that you go through when you're creating your drawings. So I think we've had I'm just listening, we've had a visitor downstairs, I think, so the dogs have been barking. Yeah, so, you know, that's pretty much it, really. I was going to leave it there, so, you know, there's quite a bit of time that's been spent. So just to recap, we've gone from looking at, you know, doing a basic hand shape. Yeah, you can see there, working from geometric shapes, rectangles, circles. Then we moved on to doing a hand, which is actually quite complex in a way. If you look at, you know, the shapes going on there, it's tricky to do. So don't give yourself a hard time. I certainly don't give myself a hard time. You know, I do try and kind of perfect what I'm doing, but you know, it's if you're just learning drawing, or you're just trying to kind of improve your skills, then don't give yourself a hard time. It's all part of a process. Enjoy the journey. Yeah, don't be too concerned about the destination. Just enjoy the journey. And that's pretty much it, really. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. Yeah, look out for more in the coming weeks. Feel free to leave some comments if you have any questions. I'll try and answer them best I can. Yeah. Oh, be sure to give me a like as well if you like this video. And that's it. See you next time. And yeah, good luck with your drawing.